Well, today we're going to go through how to set sellers' expectations from the very beginning and manage that all the way through. It's one of the most difficult topics, and I explained this a little bit in the episode. It's one of the most difficult topics for me to explain. It can be taken out of context a lot of the time by certain people. And if you're offended by this at all, or you don't believe that this is the right way to do real estate, then hey, this program probably isn't for you, because at the end of the day, I believe that this is the catalyst, the most successful real estate agents all over the world, and this is a philosophy that you should be employing in your business right now. And if you're not, okay, I believe that you're really representing the marketplace in the wrong way, and you're not managing people's expectations. You're not creating raving fans and a referral-based clients at this point if you're not managing expectations. I go through that a little bit more in the episode. I hope you enjoy. I hope you grasp it. And if you don't, reach out, because we're happy to explain it to you. Thanks so much. Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. Well, today I'm going to attempt to explain one of the most difficult topics to explain when it comes to setting price expectations. Now, it's funny, this process, I really hope that there's some newer agents in the industry that are listening to our podcast, because if we can get this concept to you and you can start practicing it early on, I believe that this method has been the catalyst to the most amount of success that I've seen from most of the best agents that I've ever worked at. And it's their ability to manage expectations from the very beginning. And I'm going to say a few things along the lines of, the education process that I think are going to be a little controversial, that if you're listening, that you might think that, oh, well, is that in the best interest of my client and all of those type of things. I ask that you put that side, or that judgmental side of the equation, off to the side. Okay, because I want you to be open-minded here to get an understanding that this is probably the most effective way to ensure that a seller does not say no to the marketplace when it turns up, only having to accept less later. So I want to say that to you again, okay, is that this is probably the most effective way that if you can manage your real estate transaction, your listing process this way from an expectation perspective, it ensures that when the marketplace turns up, that the seller doesn't say no to it, only to have to accept less later. I really do believe that it is unequivocally your fault if that situation happens. And I want to frame this in an interesting way in the beginning, and I want to go through a few little concepts here. I want to get this in your mind in the very first degree of this. This is how serious I think this is. Let's say that the real estate industry changed all of a sudden, and ultimately you were responsible that if a seller said no to an offer in the first few weeks of the property being on the marketplace, and they had to accept less later, then it was your responsibility as the agent to make up that difference. I want to say that one more time, not to patronize you guys in any way, shape, or form, but just really to let it sink in. Let's say that the real estate industry changed, that if a seller was presented with an offer in the first few weeks that they said no to, only to have to accept less a few weeks later, then you become responsibility for that deficit. If the real estate industry changed and the rules and the legislation changed for that to be the case, there would be so many fewer agents out there in the marketplace. When I say so many, I would go as far as to say I believe that 90% of the real estate industry would be gone. But where I'm leading with all of this is that the philosophy that I'm putting forward today, in the perspective of managing sellers' expectations, set to sell meeting, whatever it is that you ultimately call this, as I go through it today, there might be some moments where you think that the moral compass is being steered in the wrong direction. That is absolutely not the case. Because the first part of this and the first bit of philosophy that I want to run through with you is that this process is educating your seller on price for the sake of educating them on price. Now, what I mean by that is that let's say that their expectations are $1 million. Let's say that that's right in line with what you think it should be in the marketplace. That doesn't matter. We should be trying to educate them less the entire time anyway, so that therefore we don't make a fundamental mistake. Have you ever thought that a property was worth more than what it ultimately ended up being worth, or what you ended up selling it for? I'm sure that if you've been in real estate long enough, or the volume of transactions that you've done, you probably have seen that situation. And all in all, what I'm trying to get to is that your opinion of price shouldn't matter. And this process ensures that we educate a seller based on feedback. And that's the next bit of this that I want to disclose today, is that you'll hear me say the word feedback a lot. Now, in this concept, feedback equals price. Feedback is not bullshit made up about the color of the carpet, the painting, or the defects of the property, or the location, or the other different things. I often find that agents believe that the feedback means that you've got to tell them what's wrong with their property or what people are saying about the property, where I think that that is one of the worst things that you can do in a situation. Because one, if it's the same thing over and over again from the same people, is that they start to discredit those buyers' feedback on price because they start to get frustrated with the consistency of the things that they probably can't change about the property. But I want to make sure that when you hear the word feedback, we think about price feedback. That is the one thing that we really need to make sure that we drum into ourselves here today, is that price feedback is the only feedback that you should be really focused on. And I'll talk about how we get that price feedback out of a seller. There'll be multiple episodes that we do here about seller education and making sure that we're adjusting sellers' expectations in the best way, shape, or form so they can realize the marketplace. But it all starts with you, and it starts here in this meeting today that I want to run through with you. So the final point that I want to make sure that I put in place, and it is one that probably is a little bit aggressive, but I'm going to go down the path anyway, is that if you are not practicing real estate this way, I believe that your seller is unlucky that they chose you. A few years ago, back in Australia, a buddy of mine, Mitch Piraboom, he's been on the podcast before, shared with me a statistic that one of the large groups, being Ray White, came out with there. And they did a survey to actually check how many of their agents were doing regular weekly reports. And I've used this in one of my previous podcasts, and I don't know if I'm going to get the percentage right again because I was looking at the percentage when I was there, but I believe it was in excess of 50% of properties that weren't getting regular weekly written reports don't end up selling, or something along those lines. And essentially they were saying that, isn't your seller unlucky that they chose you if you don't have the weekly practice of doing weekly seller reports? This practice is the same thing, okay? I really do believe that this is the catalyst of making sure that not only your seller accepts the marketplace when it turns up, but it also is the catalyst to creating raving fans. Let's say that a seller wants $1 million and you get them $1 million. They just think that you got them what they want. Now, again, you might think that they're raving fans, but really, if you go back and you look at the statistics, and these are from Inman, 90% of sellers forget the name of the agent that sold them the home or sold their home for them within inside 7 months of the transaction. That's probably because they weren't dazzled with the result. I had a situation that I was involved in an auction recently. It was for a pretty high-end property in San Jose, and I was involved because at the end of the day, it was really important for me to be involved in this situation to get the business because it was a very competitive situation. And we got an excellent result because I put this strategy in place. I've had 3 referrals from the seller already. 3 referrals outside of California. One's in Colorado, one's in Florida, and one's in Manhattan in New York. And the property only closed a week ago, because he thought that we did an unbelievable job. Just so you know, their reserve price, what they wanted was $3.3 million in the beginning. Then we ended up bringing their education process down to $3.3 million they would have accepted, and we ended up getting them 3.3, just what they originally wanted. But he literally said in the email to one of the referrals that he gave, he got us $300,000 more than what we wanted. Now, there's no harm in educating your clients. That is my next and final part of philosophy before I give you the practicality of this, is that let's say that your seller wants $3.3 million, but you educate them down to $3 million to make sure that they're being very realistic about the market, because we don't know what's going to happen, and we're making sure that we're giving them the right feedback. What does feedback equal, people? Price. Okay? We're giving them the right feedback. Is there any harm in educating that client down to $3 million? No. Because they're not obligated to accept $3 million. Because if you educate them, if $3.3 million, God, if $4 million turned up, does that education process that you did before then stop them from accepting a higher offer? I'm going to answer that for you. It's not a rhetorical question. The answer is no. It just ensures that they are ecstatic with the result they did get. They don't just think that you got them what they wanted. So there's the first element of managing expectations. And this today is one of the parts of the process that we go through. I'm looking down at my notes because I don't want to get any of it wrong, because this is the insurance policy on making sure that your expectation of value for that property does not get in the way of what the seller is looking to sell their home for. I'm going to say that again, is that this is the insurance policy to make sure that your expectations as an agent don't get in the way of what the seller will accept in the marketplace. So this process here, and I want to sort of lay it out, is that this is basically going through and setting your own individual expectations. Your sellers are not involved in this meeting. Your clients are not involved in this meeting at all. I want to make sure that I reiterate that many times throughout this podcast episode. Is that this is basically an internal meeting that if you're doing an auction, then you would do it with the auction team, or you do it individually on every piece of inventory that you bring on the marketplace. Every listing that you bring on the marketplace is an internal meeting with your team, with yourself, that you set from the very beginning. And there's a few different classifications that we go through. And this is the agenda that we then set. And we have this for every single listing that comes in the door of your business. Remember, the sellers don't know about this. This is your own internal goals and your own internal expectations, so to speak, for the property. So let's say that you list the property 123 Smith Street. The sellers say yes. We do the 24-hour meeting. We sit down, go through the paperwork with them. We do a calendar of sale, which was one of our previous episodes, to make sure that there's clear expectations of communication. So that's not getting in the way. Okay. Obviously, you go through the 6 points in that 24-hour meeting, and that has been a previous episode as well. You get back to the office. You're excited. You've got a new listing. You sit down and you do this meeting with yourself or with your team or with the auction team. You do this before the property goes live on the marketplace. And the structure of this is seller's expectations is the first category. SE, seller's expectations. Our next category is public price. Okay. The next category is 24-hour price. The next category is feedback level. And then goal offers. So the agenda that you need to set for every single property that you need to go through these numbers is seller's expectations. So what do they want? Public price. Now, to explain public price is what you think the property is worth within the next 60 or 30 to 60 days. Okay? What you think the property is worth within the next 30 to 60 days, realistically. Okay? And it's interesting to see these numbers get adjusted throughout the process. The next category is the 24-hour price. Let me explain this to you in a simple fashion. What do you think you could sell the property for within 24 hours, but you will never get another listing again in that neighborhood because you've undersold it so much? So what is the 24-hour price? What do you know that you could sell this property for in 24 hours because it'd be such a good deal? Not what it's worth, but what you know you could sell it for in 24 hours, gun to your head. Now, the next one is feedback level. So this is a number based on your 24-hour price that you are not going to present to the sellers without it in writing. So let me give you an example of how the feedback level works. So let's say that the seller's expectations on a property is $1 million. That is what they want to achieve. Your public price is something I can sell it for within the next 30 to 60 days. Now, guys, I know that we've been dealing in a marketplace that's very quickly moving and very fast moving. I'm going to share some statistics with you in our next episode in perspective to different things that people aren't realizing out there at the moment. But where I'm going with this is that there's 3 certainties that I've found in life. Is death, taxes, and people want too much for their homes in the beginning. So what I'm trying to say is that there is always a difference, certainly at the moment as well, where sellers believe the market is better than what it is. If they purchase the property over the last 3 years as well, they're going to want more money than probably what the marketplace is willing to offer them at this point. So what is the public price? How much is it? It'll be a number that is probably less than your seller's expectations. So be very realistic about that, okay? Don't attach yourself to defending value too often. Defending value, they are the realtors that you look around at the moment, and they're the ones that aren't selling anything because they are defending value. Okay, you've got to let the marketplace speak, and you've got to be clear on that. But again, so seller's expectations $1 million. The public price, what we think we could sell it for in the next 30 to 60 days, I'd say somewhere along the lines of $950. Just using round numbers and just where I see things move most of the time. Then what's the 24-hour price? What is a price that I know that I could sell this thing for within 24 hours, no problem at all, cash, non-contingent, done deal, it's out of there, okay? I'm very confident that I could sell this thing for $850,000 within 24 hours based on where it is. That would be underselling it, there's no question, but I know I can sell it in 24 hours for $850, no question at all, okay? So then my feedback level, which is the next part, becomes $850. So there is an unwritten ground rule within this whole process that I'm never going to give a seller feedback over $850,000 unless it is a ratified written offer. So let me explain to you how you do that. Because we're not lying, we're not making up feedback, we are not removing feedback or not giving them feedback. It's through the questions and the quality of questions that you ask. We did an episode with Julia recently where it was about you ask better quality questions, you get better quality answers. You get asked better quality questions, you get better quality feedback. What does feedback equal? Price. So, for example, I'll give you an example of a dialogue if this is going to make any sense. Is that say you're making your callbacks after the open house, you ring, you call another agent or you call a buyer. Let's say we call the buyer. Okay, ring. Hi there, this is Ben Brady from Harcourt's Real Estate. I met you at 123 Smith Street on the weekend. Do you remember that property? Oh, yes, I do, Ben. Okay, great. Now, I'm just calling to see when I can get you back for a second look. Guys, we'll go through the follow-up phone call in another episode and how the structure of all of this works. However, okay, is that when can I get you back for a second look at the property? Oh, Ben, look, no, it really isn't for us. It just, I don't, we're just looking at the moment. We haven't made any decisions. No problem. Well, hey, part of my job is, and my responsibility is to get accurate market feedback from buyers like yourself in order to give it back to them so they can make an informed and educated decision. Can I ask you, how long have you been looking for? Oh, we've been looking for 6 months. Great. And what's your budget? Well, somewhere between, 800 and a million is sort of where we're looking. Okay. And what do you think this property is worth? Oh, well, I don't really know. Well, it's probably worth the list price. Well, the list price is actually a bidding to start from price, or if it's not an auction, well, okay, would you put, so the list price on the property at the moment is $1,050,000. Would you guys put that in writing? Oh, no, we're just looking. Okay, so you're telling me that even at, I don't know, 950, you wouldn't put that on paper? No, Ben, we're just not ready to make a decision. Now, guys, I'm going to pause quickly. Remember what our feedback level is that we've set, 850. I know I can sell it within 24 hours for 850. So I turn around and I say to them, okay, so no to 950. I don't know, again, I'm just shooting out there. So you're telling me that you wouldn't even make an offer at $850,000. Oh, no, Ben, it's just not right for us. Hey, look, I really appreciate, I just really wanted to make sure that you weren't the buyer for the property, and I really want to give some good feedback to my sellers so they can make an informed and educated decision, as I said. Thanks so much. So now, I want you to understand what has happened here. One, I think that a very big defect in North American real estate anyway is that a lot of people don't collect names and numbers at the front door, and they don't ask it as a requirement. I really do believe that, and I've mentioned this in previous episodes, that we need to be making it a requirement in our listing agreements that anybody that enters the property needs to give name and phone number or email address at least. So then we have the opportunity to follow up. It's also great sustainability for your business moving forward as well. The next part of this as well is that in the follow-up process, asking them these questions. I don't ever think that people are very truthful in the moment when you're asking them questions in front of other people and it's rushed. I think the follow-up phone call is the most important part. One, to get future business, but two, is to get the most accurate feedback out of somebody. The next part in this as well is that I find that most people don't even ask what they think the property is worth. I don't think they ask what their budget is. I don't think they ask what other properties they've seen. Have they made any offers on other properties? There's several questions that you can ask in that moment in order to get the best quality feedback out of that person. But the thing that I think is most bizarre in any individual real estate country, area, whatever it is, even if somebody does ask, how much do you think the property's worth? And they say, oh, I think it's worth the list price. Let's say it's a traditional property. They've listed it at $1,050,000. Okay. Oh, I think it's worth the list price. And you take that feedback back to the sellers. When I've asked a few more questions, so would you pay $1,050,000? No. Would you pay $950,000? No. Would you pay, I don't know, $850,000? No, it's just not right for us. Right there, folks. Right there. There is a $200,000 false economy that you are creating if you don't ask better quality questions. I hope that you're following along, because that right there is a realization that I got very early on in my real estate career, and it really has made me excel with exceeding sellers' expectations and ensuring that I'm not selling them a false economy that is not really there, just for them to be angry with me later. So, better quality questions get better quality answers. What do you think it's worth? Well, I think it's worth, maybe $1 million. Great. Would you pay that? No. Well, what about 900? I don't know. Would you put that on paper? Well, no, Ben, it's not right for us. What about 850? Oh, would the seller really accept that? I don't know. Why don't we present it to them and see what they say? No, it's not for us. So now in my feedback, it will say, would not pay $850,000 when asked. Now, when you're delivering this feedback to your sellers, you can say to them, hey, look, I asked them if they would pay the $1,050,000 and they said no. I asked them $950,000. They said no. I even asked them $850,000 and they still refused. and their budget's between 800 and a million, so they're the right buyer for the property. Okay, it's just not right for them. That is credible feedback. No false economies. Now, the other part that I want to make sure that I share with you as well is that then the next part of this agenda is goal offers. So we want to set the goal offers that we want to achieve on the property in the first degree. These are educational offers, and they are designed in order to make sure that the sellers aren't overinflating what they think is going to happen next. Let me give you an example of that. A very big mistake that I see often as a third party being involved in as many transactions as I have is that, let's say you get a low offer in the first degree. If it's an auction, even if it's a traditional listing, you get a low offer. And then the next offer is more than what that first offer was. What does the seller immediately think? Oh, well, the offers are just going to keep going up. I can't tell you. I can't count on 100 hands with 10 fingers each, with 5 fingers each. How many times I've had a seller say to me, "Well, the first one was this, and the next one's this, and so the offers are just going to keep getting higher." The smallest little bits of hope is a magnet to a seller that they will hold on to throughout the transaction. I don't think that's wrong. I'm hopeful as well if I'm selling my property as well. But realistically, guys, is that you've got to kind of, and I know this is bad terminology, and I don't want this to be something that is said out to anybody, but realistically, to those that are listening, I think that you do need to squash the hope a little bit in order for them to actually live in the reality of being able to make a better decision. Again, the whole purpose of this is to ensure that when the marketplace turns up, that the seller accepts it. The biggest failure that we have as agents that I really do believe we need to embody is that if a seller says no to an offer in the first degree, and then they have to accept less later, just because you chose not to educate them from day one. Now, the goal offers in this situation, I believe that you should try and get one with inside 48 hours of your 24-hour price, because again, if it's really a 24-hour price, you should be able to get a magnitude or multiple offers around $850,000. You should be encouraging people to submit offers. That is a very good educational element in order for them to see that feedback. Okay. Now, I do believe also that you should try for your second offer to be lower than your first offer. There is no set amount, but it should be lower than your first offer so that it really doesn't give them the sense of that, oh, well, the longer we wait, the higher the offers will go. Because remember, the longer they wait, the more tarnished that reputation of the property becomes on the marketplace, and it starts to lose steam. So I want to try and reiterate all of this to you. I hope that it is sunk in. It is a difficult topic for me to explain. It is a difficult topic for me to philosophize over. But I really do believe if there was one characteristic of the very best agents that operate all over the world, this is it. This is it. It creates raving fans. It ensures that you are making sure it's an insurance policy that when the marketplace turns up, the seller can see that and your opinions haven't clouded their judgment. There's so many different things that I could go into this, and I could talk about it. It's actually something that I prefer to talk with somebody else about and have questions back and forward, because you get the most out of it at that point. But this is just so critical for you to understand the fundamentals of this. So, leading through this, we've got seller's expectation. Say it's $1 million. The public price is what you think you could sell the property for within 30 to 60 days. 24 hours price is the price that you could sell it for within 24 hours and probably never get another listing again in that neighborhood because you would have undersold it, but you know you could have get rid of it and liquidate it within 24 hours. That becomes your feedback level. The feedback level is the unwritten ground rule that you're not going to show your seller any feedback over that level because you're going to ask better quality questions of people unless it is a ratified written contract. And then you have your goal offers. 2 goal offers. Your first goal offer should be around your 24-hour price. Your second offer should probably be lower to curb expectations. Now, sometimes you can't manage that because things come in as they come in. I get that. However, the one thing I'm going to leave you with, and this is a statistic that we've looked at on our auction process, is that 97% success rate. Now, keep in mind, we have a 97% success rate if a property has received more than 3 offers on that property prior to auction. 97% success rate. Now, our typical success rate is around 90%. This is an increased possibility that if you can get 3 or more offers on a property prior to auction day, you have a 97% success rate. Okay. Now, I believe that same statistic is out there in Australia and many other territories and countries that do auction as well. And it would be interesting to understand where that stands in a traditional format. Okay. However, the offers are a really clear element of education for your client within the marketplace. You've got to make sure. I think that one of the most dangerous things that can ever happen is a very levered contingent offer at a very high price point gets in front of your sellers. Imagine you get an offer for $1,050,000 in day one or day two or the first week of your property being on the market. It's contingent to the cow flying over the moon, and then it falls out of escrow. That's the type of stuff that I would protect my client from, and I would be telling other agents and buyers that I will not submit that to the sellers. Do not submit that offer with those contingencies. We will never, ever, ever accept that, and it's going to completely ruin my sellers' expectations, because all of a sudden then for the next number of weeks, they're expecting $1,050,000, and if it's not out there, then we're in trouble. I hope this has been beneficial, guys. I hope you've taken a little bit away from it. If you have any questions, reach out. We've got several bits of training material on this. It is a really big part of our process when it comes to auction, but it is not exclusive to auction. It's exclusive to whoever wants to use it. Thanks so much. So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.